Hi, this is Chris from Hope Drone, and you're listening to the Mosh Pit on Sin.
Hope Drone is an Australian band who play a mixture of black and sludge with a heavy focus on atmosphere. They released their debut full-length, Cloak of Ash, earlier this year, and will be supporting Germany's Downfall of Gaia when they tour Australia in November, playing at the Bendigo Hotel in Melbourne on the 21st. I'm joined by their vocalist and guitarist Chris Rowden. Chris, how are we?
Good, thanks, mate. Good talking to you.
So what can people expect from a Hope Drone show? I mean, how do you manage to replicate that atmosphere on stage?
Look, I think the best thing about Cloak of Ash, our latest record, is that it basically just captures the live sound of the band. So when we first went into the studio to record our self-titled, everything was done kind of separately, and the mixing process and everything, which was handled by Sanford Parker, in the States and everything like that, didn't have as much of our involvement. So when we went into the studio and did Cloak of Ash, and we approached it completely differently and effectively just captured the live sound of the band. So it's completely a live recording. We effectively just set up and plugged in all our amps as we normally would, as if we were setting up on stage. So kind of what you hear is what you get, and I think it makes it really easy to reproduce that sound live, because there's really nothing more going on in that recording than sort of throwing some mics in front of our amps and just capturing what we do at any given time. So it's kind of like walking into a jam room and just hanging out with us when you listen to that album.
That's awesome. So you're supporting Downfall of Gaia, as I mentioned. Now, how does that come about? Do you sort of have any criteria that you sort of consider when you get an offer like that?
No, not really. I mean, those guys, we've been talking to them for a while, and a few of the guys in that band were actually just happened to really like the music that we were making, and kind of contacted us on that basis. And I guess a lot of good people want to come out to Australia and experience the wildlife, cuddle a koala and stuff like that. So they obviously always wanted the chance to tour here, and I think we connect musically, so we're just a good fit for them. And it's nice to actually be able to play some dates with a band that is kind of from the same neighborhood musically. So yeah, and then there's some really nice guys in that band, so that's the main thing, is that touring with them is going to be a lot of fun, and we'll have a great time.
It's really cool. So off your first your debut, Cloak of Ash, you've got this track, Unending Grey, that's about 20 minutes long. Is it difficult to play such a long song? I mean, you can't exactly take a break in between.
Yeah, well, you kind of can, actually, because
really?
You sort of hit this section in that song where everything goes quiet for a bit, and then it kind of builds back up again. So thankfully, there's almost like a breather built in. But yeah, I mean, that takes some stamina, and recording that live especially, and getting like a good clean take that was start to finish, was a pretty mammoth effort. It certainly took a fair bit of practice and polish before we could just go into the studio and belt that out. But in terms of, I mean, we have songs that are like half as long as Unending Grey, and they're actually a lot harder to play, particularly for Francis, our drummer, because some of those songs are, like blast beats from start to finish, whereas thankfully Unending Grey has a bit more ebb and flow to it, so it's kind of a little bit easier on us, yeah. But it's certainly, you get to the end of that song and you feel like you've played a whole set, basically.
So how do you mix, you mentioned the blast beat, how do you sort of go, all right, here's the blast beating bit, here's the slower bit that sort of ebbs and flows, as you said. How do you kind of get those to mix together? Because in people's minds, at least, they sort of, it'd be a difficult transition.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, I think that's kind of one of the strengths of the music, and typically, like this type of music that we play, is that you can do that whole light and shade thing. You can kind of explore, the intensity of blast beats and stuff like that, but also kind of go to the other end of the spectrum and get into the more kind of ambient type passages. As far as, I mean, I don't know, like the songs we feel kind of have a natural flow to themselves, if that makes sense. So when we start writing them, we'll take a collection of ideas, and eventually the song kind of takes us where it needs to go. And so you just kind of feel it out, and particularly with Unending Grey, I mean, that's a long song, but it just, that, like the huge long build-up in the middle of it, which then goes back into blast beats, it just kind of naturally progresses that way when you jam it out. And certainly that's how it felt when we were writing it. So I think, the flow is kind of naturally there. And, I mean, the rise and fall of the music just kind of takes you from a mellow part back into the intensity as it builds up. So thankfully, it's not something we have to think about too much when we write, I guess.
Great. So, in terms of after this tour next year, whenever, do you have any plans or any ideas of maybe touring outside of Australia?
Yeah, absolutely. Like one of the great things about getting signed to a label like Relapse is that opportunities start presenting themselves, and you get noticed by people that you particularly as a Australian band from Brisbane, you wouldn't necessarily ever get noticed. So yeah, there's a bunch of opportunities popping up and a bunch of things in the pipe that I probably can't even really talk about yet. But
No, I understand.
definitely some bucket list items that we all want to tick off in terms of festivals and around Europe and stuff like that. And so yeah, I mean the trouble with us, I guess, is lining it up with everyone. Like we all have pretty busy lives, and Hope Drone was never started as like a big touring band or anything like that. It was more just we wanted to kind of have a project where we could fully express ourselves and kind of explore things artistically. And it's just happened to have, I guess, taken off a little bit more for us now. So, yeah, lining things up so that we can actually, head overseas is tricky, but yeah, it's definitely in the works.
Now, in terms of the major label, I mean, you're kind of an out there band in terms of, I mean, metal is not mainstream in general, but you're kind of a bit outside of the mainstream of metal. How do you get supported by a label? How do they say, yeah, they're a bit out there, but those are the guys we're kind of looking for?
Honestly, I can't answer that question, and I think that is a really good question. You look at a label like Relapse, which is, huge and has a lot of, like, incredibly significant bands, that have kind of solidified themselves in metal history almost. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have a lot of kind of, I guess, more listener-friendly bands as well. Like, on that label, it's not all just super heavy music. In terms of where we fit in, it's hard to say. I remember after they after they signed us, there was this awesome blog post somewhere saying that Relapse was trying to cash in on the hipster dollar and whatever with the whole hipster black metal thing, which made me laugh. But yeah, I mean, I guess like we're looking at a time where I guess for lack of a better description, atmospheric black metal type bands are definitely getting noticed a lot more. And I don't think we have a lot in common with bands like Death Heaven, but I think that their success is kind of making labels in general like pay a bit more attention to this style of music. And I guess in a way, like some of the better bands playing it as well had kind of fallen away. Like Ultimate Plague are sort of touring at the moment, but they're on hiatus for a while there, and Wolf in the Throne Room is releasing ambient tracks now, and so I guess there was maybe a little bit of space for more bands like us to sort of get signed and noticed, which is cool. But otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I guess like you look at Relapse, like they have like Merker. I don't know if you've seen. She's effectively like a one-woman black metal band, and she seems to be getting a hell of a lot of attention for them. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that we quite have the same marketability that she does, but I guess that was working out well for them, and we could kind of fall into that niche as well.
In terms of a couple of questions about the album, tone was really important, I felt, about the album. How do you go about creating the right one? How do you, in terms of guitar tone, how do you find that?
Well, as I said, like we kind of, the great thing, the vibe feels perfect to us when we listen back to that album. Like some people think it's too lo-fi. Other people, I think, who are more familiar with black metal would think it was too polished, I guess, which is this funny kind of medium you sit in. But really, I mean, as I said, we just took our amps and and took our pedals and just plugged in. Like there wasn't a lot of, it wasn't so much thinking about like how we were going to achieve a certain tone. It was just capturing what we already had captured. And I mean, a lot of like the vision for that. I mean, Karl and I both appreciate guitar tone. I don't know if you've ever seen our guitars, but we have custom guitars which are really quite similar, and Karl has always been really, I guess, good with guitar pedals and effects and stuff like that. So he's always been exploring like a lot of cool sounds and things like that. So he's rubbed off on me in that way. And I guess it's like the way you play it as well. Like a lot of people say tone is in the hands more so, and I guess like a lot of the chord structures and stuff that we write our songs with have a big influence on that. But yeah, honestly, like if you just came and hang out with us in a jam room, that's exactly what we sound like. And so thankfully, we didn't have to try too hard to achieve that kind of that tone of the album.
At times, the album can feel incredibly dense and heavy, in a good way, obviously. But was there any difficulty trying to make that work, sort of make it comprehensible?
Yeah, I suppose, like, I've definitely, I think we've been described before live as like a train that, could derail at any time. Like, people have definitely described it that way. And I think of, like, it's pretty fast music, I suppose, and we probably play it even faster live. So, yeah, like, I think it's pretty dense compositions, and it's easy to take things too far. When you have everything drenched in reverb and, Francis is blasting, and, Page's bass tone is pretty ridiculous as well. He kind of doesn't know when to step back. We're always having to tell him to turn down and, turn on less distortion pedals and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully it came out okay on the album. But it's definitely something we have to be careful of.
Something that also caught my attention about the album was the front cover. It's sort of really interesting, but I don't know what it is.
So the guy who did that, his name's Orion, and he's actually an in-house artist for Relapse. And we were kind of looking around for ideas, and then Relapse, brought him to our attention, and he'd done some real, he did like the cover of Yob, Clearing the Path to Ascend, and just some really amazing artwork that I've always been a big fan of. And we threw some ideas at him about effectively like a landscape being sucked away by a black hole, like a void, which kind of encapsulates some of the I guess concepts in the lyrics and stuff like that. And he sort of, like true to form, I get these ideas in my head, but I could never like translate that to an actual piece of artwork. Thankfully, he took our kind of disconnected and probably impossible to recreate ideas and turned them into this just this incredible. It's effectively like a landscape that's being like twisted, into the void. And so he's done that on the front with mountains and trees and all that sort of stuff, and then the back with obviously the ocean and things like that. So we were just blown away by that guy, and I'm forever in his debt because he took like a loose concept we had and just turned it into something that we all really, really love and that we really feel fits the vibe of the album.
So on the album, do you write the lyrics, or is that someone else?
Yeah. So I write the lyrics for the band. Yeah.
Where do you get your inspiration from?
I think I guess it's a pretty broad array of things. I mean, a huge part of it, I guess, is just reflecting on the world and looking past, I suppose. I think we're really lucky to live in a country like Australia, and like a lot of the world is, insofar as it consumes metal, we live in these kind of established nations where everyone is safe and everyone is, fed, and we don't really have to worry so much about our day-to-day safety and our quality of life and everything. And when you look beyond that and you look at how most of the world actually lives, in poverty and with fear of violence in their lives and all those sorts of things, I guess it's more reflecting on the world as a whole where a lot of those themes come from. And then the other big thing is, during the course of Hope, and I became a dad, and you definitely change your perspective on how you look at the world, because you're not just worried about yourself, you're actually worried about someone else, and bringing someone into the world and taking care of them, and knowing what you do about how the world is and the people who are in it and how ugly it can be, I think definitely changes how you view things and how you feel about people around you and I guess humanity as a whole. So that was a couple of really big things that I guess influenced the lyrics on the album.
You mentioned in another interview that you'd like to cover something from The Cure's Disintegration. I'm a really big fan of that album. Why did you choose that one?
I just think that album is perfect from start to finish. I would put that in I think that is one of the best albums of all time. But I mean, every song is great, and just the mood that it captures is just perfect. I'd love to do the title track itself, actually. But yeah, I mean, I don't think that, musically, I think, we have a fair bit in common with, that album, I guess. It's certainly a lot less intense than what we do, but in terms of the way that it kind of the vibe that it carries and all that sort of stuff. I don't feel like we're too far away. I think it would translate well into, post-black metal.
No, I think that'd be thoroughly interesting.
Yeah.
I also read that you'd listened to the new Krallis album, something that I'm a big fan of Krallis. What did you think of it? I'm curious to get other people's thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that's a great album. It's funny because Krallis, I've loved Krallis, excellent albums all the way along. But it's funny because I always felt like I wanted them to, they have all these frenetic parts and then they have these amazing epic parts. And I always wanted them to sit on those epic parts for longer and flesh them out more because they were just so incredible. And instead, on this new album, they did the complete opposite almost. They dropped those epic melodic parts and just stuck to the frantic, more aggressive stuff. And then the songs got a lot shorter and it's funny, it works so well. I feel sad in a way because they lost the parts that I love, the most. It almost went in the opposite direction to how I'd wished, but I just think it's such a pure and focused album. I don't know what you think of it, but that's definitely the feel that I get from it.
No, I think I definitely agree. I think that's actually captured something that I've sort of struggled to put into words, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, what's a good example? I don't know, that intro track.
Yeah, the intro track.
Just the most incredible melodic thing that I've heard on the one before the most recent album. And I don't know. Yeah, it just blows me away. But then, this one's gone in the complete opposite way, and it's working for them. It seems to be getting crazy reviews, which is cool.
Before we finish, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, to mention?
Thanks for everyone's support. Thanks for buying Cloak of Ash and giving us an opportunity to get on a label like Relapse and play fun shows and hopefully in the next couple of years see more of the world. So yeah, thank you very much.
Hopedone is an Australian band who play a mixture of black and sludge with a heavy focus on atmosphere. They released their debut full-length, Cloak of Ash, earlier this year, and will be supporting Germany's Downfall of Gaia when they tour Australia in November, playing at the Bendigo Hotel in Melbourne on the 21st. Chris, thank you so much for joining me.
Great, thank you very much.